So the Tor project sent out a letter on May 29th that was full of deception. And that's what we're talking about today. Why? Who actually cares? Well, the actual issue is if you can't trust them to tell you the truth with a simple newsletter, then what can you actually trust them with? Now, for a bit of context, this will be my 4th video on this subject. However, this one will be pretty short compared to the other ones. And I've released 3 videos exposing the Tor project's various failures, which is really unfortunate. The first was Tor Browser's latest update to get you fingerprinted, which was released April 22nd, and it showed basically via their own developer statements their removal of OS spoofing protection. 2 weeks later, on May 6th, I released For 11 Months, Tor let users think that they were safe, which revealed the broken security slider. The third, For 9 years, Tor ignored Princeton's proof BGP attacks can unmask millions of users, essentially showed their infrastructure vulnerabilities, and the fact that Princeton University had actually discussed mitigation techniques like 9 years prior to that. Now, combined, these videos reached almost 250,000 viewers who really just deserve to know the truth. Now, let's actually pivot for a minute and go to the actual newsletter that I mentioned. Here, we can see that it says, "Don't worry, it's here to stay. There's been some online speculation and confusion around OS spoofing in Tor Browser as a result of Tor Browser's latest stable release. Let's be clear, OS spoofing has never gone away, and it is here to stay." So, let's address each deception individually. And I'll start with the most vague and then, get to the actual serious lie. Addressing the kind of nonsensical and propagandist, citation of online speculation and confusion, there was no speculation. Nor was there any real confusion. Many of you already know this because in those 3 videos, 2,316 of you actually commented. Here's the actual speculation. Their developer stating, "We turn off spoofing OS." And here's the confusion part. Their actual developer stating, "Remove the relevant machinery from Firefox altogether." They're basically calling their own documentation decision speculation. Outright lie you can find where they say OS spoofing has never gone anywhere. Developer documentation actually proves they removed it entirely. This isn't even a question. This is a direct lie to users who actually trust them. Lastly, they say here to stay when they actually removed the code in April of 2025. 1 month later, they claim that it's here to stay. The code is gone. It's the feature is gone. Now, that's not me guessing that it's gone. Their own developers explicitly documented actually removing it. On October 2024, developer Thorin opens issue 43170, stating privacy-resistant fingerprinting spoofing user agent headers should be false in Tor Browser 14+. The original intent of 42647 was that we turn off spoofing OS. Did you catch that one? Turn off spoofing OS. That's their words, right? That's not improve or modify, it's turn off. And when you turn off the light, is the light still there? So. In April of 2025, developer Morgan implemented the removal in issue 43189 when he said, with 43170, we're no longer spoofing user agents in any of our browsers. We can therefore remove the relevant machinery from Firefox altogether. Now, to be clear, they stopped faking the operating system part of the user agent, where everyone used to appear as a Windows user. Now your real OS actually shows through. And we'll cover more detail of this in a minute, but Morgan basically confirms that they removed the entire machinery that made this protection even possible to begin with. Here's what actually proves their actual deception. Developer Pierre admits privacy resist fingerprint spoof OS and user agent handler is still in our prefs file, even though we ripped out the code. Think about that. They left a setting that does nothing, like, I guess, leaving a light switch on, like the wall, after removing the wiring. Users might flip that switch thinking they're protected, but nothing actually happens. It's a dummy switch, right? The protection is completely gone, even though the illusion remains. And the newsletter continues with calculated misdirection, I might add, when it says, Tor Browser has always limited user agents to general categories: Windows, Mac OS, Linux or Android in JavaScript, and Windows or Android in HTTP headers. That means we spoof the OS version and architecture, which was always the approach in JavaScript. Now it's consistent in HTTP headers too. Okay, so let's decode this. Harmonization lie. Here's what actually happened. Before their change, there were two ways that websites could actually detect your operating system, mainly. One was through JavaScript, when enabled, which could see your real OS, and through HTTP headers, the basic information your browser sends to every single website, which Tor spoofed to show everyone as a Windows user, right? So this meant if you disabled JavaScript, say for security, which most people who want security do, you were protected. And the HTTP headers still hid your real OS. Everyone looked like a Windows user in the server logs. And they removed that protection, and now HTTP headers reveal your real operating system, just like JavaScript does. If you're on Linux, the server sees Linux. If you're on Mac, the server sees Mac. And they took away the protection that basically mattered the most, and the one that worked when users did everything right, and called it harmonization. Now, to be fair, look at different sides of this argument. They'll probably argue, like their defenders at Privacy Guides did, that CSS could detect your OS anyways. But that's nonsense. CSS-based OS detection is speculative at best and pretty much hit or miss guesswork based on things like scroll bar widths. Like HTTP headers are precise, right? Permanent records that actually say this user runs Linux, like almost definitively, right? Now, there's a massive difference between maybe we can guess your OS through some CSS tricks that might or might not work, and your OS is permanently logged in plain text on every server you visit every time you visit it. They know this. They removed the protection anyways because they wanted to. They basically redefined OS spoofing to hide what they actually did. And again, remember, previously, OS spoofing meant all users appeared as Windows, regardless of the actual operating system. That's what provided the anonymity and made it hard to be fingerprinted. Everyone looked identical, and if everyone had the same fingerprint, it made them, like, obviously harder to fingerprint. So they're calling version spoofing now OS spoofing. Like, version spoofing hides whether you're on Windows 10 or Windows 11. OS spoofing hid whether you were Windows user, Linux user, or Mac, and the entirety of the OS. These are fundamentally different protections that we're actually talking about. And before their change, again, server logs showed everyone as a Windows user. I really want to emphasize that, and I know I'm beating that dead horse, but it's important. After the change, Linux users showed as Linux. Mac users showed as Mac. They fragmented the anonymity set, and then they lied about it. And that's my beef. Like, so now, like, watch, they'll try to defend this with some, like, technicality in between, like, their panhandling posts that they make where they beg for tens of thousands of dollars. They'll say the preference still exists in the about config. Sure, a dead preference that does nothing because they ripped out the code. Their words, their developers' words. They claim they're still doing OS spoofing. because they hide the version numbers. Like, I mean, that's like saying that you're wearing a disguise because you put on clown shoes, but nothing else. It's laughably stupid. They'll argue that JavaScript already revealed your OS anyways. So what? With JavaScript disabled, which security conscious users do, HTTP headers were the kind of last line of defense. And now that's gone too. So server logs permanently record your real OS. And this might seem like some kind of little detail, but ask any serious investigator if they care about a piece of identifying information that adds uniqueness to the target. And they'll point to their September 2024 blog post as proof that they actually announced it. They had a passing singular mention in an alpha release blog that nobody reads. And this was, in my opinion, for plausible deniability. I can't factually state that, but that's my contention. These developers making six figures couldn't tweet about removing a core privacy feature, nor could the marketing team, apparently, but they can beg continually on social media for you to fund them when the feds are not giving them millions of dollars. Now, when confronted in the comments of the first video that I put out there, they claimed that proposals for this change were introduced in September of 2024 with the Tor Browser 14.0A4 release, calling on the Tor community to provide feedback. We received very little feedback and implemented the change. They buried the change in the alpha release notes in GitLab tickets and then blamed users for not actually finding it. And this goes, beyond reading terms of service agreement or even release notes. And none of that anyone actually reads. Like, we both know that. They legit expected people to go to their GitLab and read developer conversations, thousands of pages to know what's actually going on when they post regularly on multiple social media accounts. The real agenda appears in Thorin's own words from issue 43170. We are meant to discourage users from changing settings in the about config. By adding a switch, you are allowing entropy to increase, which is antithetical to the mission. My intent, and has been for years, is not to spoof the OS in Linux Mac, not to add a pref for users to fiddle with. All right. They view user choice as antithetical to their mission, is what they're telling you. They don't want users to have preferences to fiddle with. Like not allowing people to modify settings in a browser that those same people fund. Like, if you're a U.S. citizen anyway and pay taxes, you're a donor. That's what it is. Or if you're a donor from another country, you're still paying for it. Like, keep in mind, the guy that's actually saying this makes well over $100,000 a year to do this job and works in the comfort of his own home. And here we can see an ad for developer position. And this is an entry level position, it seems like. So most likely the devs that are actually talking about taking away user choice make a lot more money. Anyway, another developer actually warned about the consequences before implementation, saying that my concern is passive fingerprinting in case of server seizure. The server logs can reveal more information about the user to the adversary. No one answered him. They just left him on scene. When markets get seized or hidden services get compromised, that data absolutely helps identify users. Privacy guides tried chirping in and running damage control for the Tor project, claiming that there's still spoofing going on. It's just 4 different buckets instead of 1. 4 means segregation, not spoofing. So before, there was 1 group. Everyone appeared as being on Windows. And after, it's 4 groups. So clearly labeled by OS, like they're categorizing users instead of protecting them, which was my point. Like, they also claimed, privacy guys, that HTTPS prevents the issue. And HTTPS prevents network interception, sure, but not server logging, moron. Like, when servers get seized, logs contain OS fingerprints, regardless of HTTPS. But, like, here's what actually makes this excuse so pathetic. Most onion sites run HTTP, not HTTPS. And don't answer this, but how many people do you know that download Tor Browser to watch YouTube videos? Or make a Reddit account, considering the fact you can't, it's not going to be a lot, right? So, I mean the latter. If we're on Jeopardy, I'd say, what is, Tor hidden services, right? Like, did they forget that onion sites actually exist? You're downloading the Tor browser. What are those access? Okay, let's put that to the side for a minute. We'll just forget about it. They didn't need HTTPS because Tor already provides end-to-end encryption to hidden services, right? So their HTTPS solves this argument is completely meaningless. It's nonsense. So for the very services where anonymity matters most, darknet markets, whistleblower sites, hidden services, right? Privacy Guides absolutely knows this, but spread this nonsensical misinformation. And this isn't their actual first time trying to pull this kind of nonsense either. In June of 2024, Graphene OS actually had to call out Privacy Guide's leader for spreading lies about their product, claiming they marketed to criminals. Graphene OS called it a thoroughly dishonest attempt to harm them. Seems Privacy Guides has a pattern of attacking actual privacy products while defending those who do things like remove privacy features. All right, so we move on, right? But look at who Tor thanks in their newsletter. On a related note, we'd like to thank Privacy Guides for spearheading a productive discussion around a flaw in Tor Browser's security slider. Privacy Guides, the same nonprofit that defended Tor OS spoofing removal, saying that classification was spoofing. Can't make this up. In the video comments, claiming that, quote, the risk for people or niche OSs has not significantly changes when it absolutely did. Like, my security slider video reached 68,000 people and almost 900 of you actually commented, exposing this kind of 11-month vulnerability that existed. And of course, they didn't want to talk about this channel in that newsletter. But they definitely wanted to thank their defenders. But both organizations are nonprofits. I get it, dude. 3 videos later with 239,000 views, combined views anyways, and over 2,300 comments, they can't really claim ignorance anymore, though. 68 users responded directly to their pinned comment in that first video, and the Tor project never bothered to respond to a single one. Instead, they posted damage control and basically ran away. The timeline really shows everything. October of 2024, they made the decision to remove OS spoofing. April of 2025, there was implementation and code removal. And then April 22nd of 2025 was my first video exposing their change. And May 29th of 2025 was the newsletter that was actually lying about it. So 7 months after deciding to remove it, 1 month after implementing it, and 5 weeks after getting exposed, they sent a newsletter claiming it was never removed. They literally state OS spoofing has never gone anywhere, while their developers documented removing it entirely, which you saw. They claim it's here to stay after ripping it out. The Tor project deliberately deceived users rather than just admit what they did. They removed privacy features, then they lied about it in an official communication. My advice would be to stop donating to projects that lie about their actions. Stop trusting newsletters that contradict developer documentation. Stop believing organizations that treat user choice as a threat. The newsletter proves that they'll rather deceive users than actually tell the truth about anything. So, as always, thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.